dogs are people too. And hitchhikers are hikers too. Okay, whatever. Hey everyone, it's Jo. I'm the Kosher Ninja, and we've been chatting about my adventure last year hiking on the Shvil Israel, or Israel National Trail. If you're new here, I'm so glad you've stopped by, and while you're here, go ahead and check out my videos from the Shvil. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when I post new videos. But right now, let's talk about tramps. Like we said last time, aside from your gear, navigation tools, and access to water and resupply, your two most important resources for the Shvil will be trail angels and tramps. We talked about trail angels last time, so what about tramps? What are they? Well, you've probably heard me use this term a couple of times in my Shvil videos. No, a tramp is not a hobo or a vagrant or even a floozy or slut. Yeah. In New Zealand, it turns out that a tramp would be a hike or a ramble in the bush. But no, it's not that either. In Hebrew, a tramp, and let's get this right, it's not a tramp, it's a tramp, is actually a ride or a lift, especially a hitchhike. Hitchhiking is very common among backpackers, and for example, on the US trifecta, it's pretty near impossible to avoid having to hitchhike into town for resupply or other reasons. But getting back to the Shvil, some hikers prefer to avoid tramps altogether, for all kinds of reasons, and fortunately on the Shvil you can actually manage to avoid it if you want. One of my hiking buddies felt very strongly that it was taking advantage of people. I beg to disagree, because if I stick my finger out on an Israeli highway, there's absolutely no reason anyone has to stop for me. And I can tell you, depending on where and when you are, they won't. But it's just like any other negotiation. Sticking my finger out is the first move, and then it's up to the driver to decide if they want to negotiate. Ultimately, if your roadside negotiation is successful, you end up with a lift to somewhere, and your tramp ends up with a great story from your adventures and the warm and fuzzy feeling that they've just done a mitzvah. Maybe some people think it's cheating, and I suppose that depends on what your intention is with the Shvil and what you end up doing with the tramp. So if your plan is to hike every single inch of the Shvil and you end up skipping a section with the tramp, yeah, that's cheating. My original plan, it's windy. It's really hot out here, but it's also windy, so therefore the wind chimes are wanting to get into the video. Okay. My original plan was to walk every inch of the Shvil from Mount Hermon to Eilat. That plan, as you know, changed on day one when I decided, well, actually, I guess I made the decision on the morning of day 2 that I was going to skip the second section down from Hermon and take the bus straight to Kibbutz Dan to continue my hike from there. But at this point, I was still planning to hike every inch from Kibbutz Dan all the way to Eilat. Yeah. On day 3, I had a chat with some fellow hikers and even scoffed at their plan of bypassing a certain section around, I think, day 20-ish, where you have to get around a big power plant and it's reputedly very ugly and boring. And if you've ever been to the central coast of Israel, you know exactly the power plant that I'm talking about. So at that stage, I was still firmly in the camp of that's cheating. By the way, I did end up walking that whole section around the power plant, even with massive blisters, and I'm glad I did. The last 3 or 4 kilometers after the power plant are, definitely ugly and boring. But around the power plant itself, it was actually surprisingly pretty if you could just ignore the fact that there was a highway on your other side. Go ahead, check out the video. So the cheating thing. Why was I out there? What was I trying to accomplish? Well, yes, one of my goals was to actually hike the whole distance, and this was important to me. But I had other goals too, and one of which was to actually get to Eilat in one piece. And getting there in time to celebrate my birthday, and certainly getting there in time to meet my brother and sister-in-law who were coming for their first ever visit to Israel. As a result, very quickly I had to weigh my different objectives and make some difficult decisions. It was day 6, and after running into some potentially serious water problems on day 5, I left camp with a good 6 liters of water. Yes, that's 6 kilos of water on my back. Big mistake. Oh, and by the way, please just ignore the cicadas. They're particularly loud this summer, it seems, or maybe it's just my imagination, but yeah, they don't know any better. So I'm sorry. So anyways, it was a 1 kilometer walk just to get to the trailhead, and there I met a woman who inspired me. She told me that she had some ongoing issues and problems with her feet, but she was doing the Shvil anyway, and she was going to do it her way. Even if that meant she had to skip some sections, so be it. A couple of hours later, staring down yet another uphill battle, sweating like a pig and feeling like I was gonna die, I finally accepted that I would have to make some adjustments to my plan, and that was okay. I turned around and found a tramp that took me to the trail angel. So, is catching a tramp safe? In Israel, especially if you're on the Shvil, it is absolutely safe, but of course you have to be smart about it, just like anything. And at this point, I'd like to tell you a story that I probably should have told you last time when we were talking about trail angels, but it kind of fits here too. So I had arrived in Arad and was really out of my comfort zone. For all intents and purposes, I had never been in the south of Israel, and certainly not in the desert. Well, En Gedi, but that doesn't really count. Arad is the gateway to the desert on the Shvil, and I was lost, trying to find the trail angel, and it was getting dusk. Suddenly, a random car stopped in the middle of the road, and a woman leaned out to ask if I was a Shvilist and if I needed a place to stay. I explained that I had a place, but I just couldn't find it, and turns out she didn't know any better than I did where it was, but she told me that if I couldn't find it, if I had any problems, she was a trail angel, and her name was on the list, so I could stay with her. So fortunately, I found my original trail angel shortly after that, but it certainly helped me feel better that I had a backup plan if all else failed. Another couple of hikers I had met a few weeks earlier had also had a very similar story. So why am I telling you this story now, other than to tell you that Israeli trail angels are very enthusiastic? And they are. But what does this have to do with tramps? Well, Israelis in general are very kind-hearted and hospitable, and they want to help, especially if they know you're doing the Shvil. So they're happy to give you a lift if they can and love hearing about your adventure. Often their offering a lift actually allows, or volunteering as a trail angel, actually allows them to live vicariously through you because they'd like to do what you're doing, but feel for whatever reason, maybe they're busy or they have family obligations or they feel that physically they can't, so they can kind of live it through your experiences. So how do you catch a tramp in Israel? For those of us in North America and probably a lot of other places, you would probably stand on the side of the road and stick up your thumb, right? Like they do in the movies. Well, that's not what you do in Israel. But thanks to the movies and the context, people will probably understand and you'll do just fine. But it's a surefire way to announce that you're a foreigner. So if you want to stick out like a sore thumb, go ahead, stick out your thumb. A true Israeli would stand on the side of the road and point away and down with their index finger at about a 45-degree angle, sort of toward the center line of the highway. So once you stick your finger out, how easily will you be able to get a tramp? That depends on where you are and time of day and any number of other factors. So, for example, in and around major population centers, it's going to be very difficult. Like any other country, people who live in major cities are busy with their own affairs, and it's just harder to find somebody who's going your direction. So it's just pretty much better to be prepared to just take the bus. Further from population centers, traffic is lighter, but people are generally more willing to help. Not to mention, it's also more likely that they can help when the highway only goes in one direction. Shabbat and other holy days are a completely different story. On Shabbat, you might catch a tramp, but be prepared to wait longer. On Yom Kippur, just forget about it. It's not true that nobody drives on Yom Kippur, but nobody drives on Yom Kippur. Some other tips. Always make sure that the car that stops for you has the yellow Israeli license plates. At a junction, if you can, try to stand past the intersection. Many potential tramps might end up turning at the exit, and you just don't want to be wasting all your hopes on a bunch of cars that just aren't even going in your direction in the first place. Always talk to the driver and find out where they're heading first. I confess that here again, I didn't always take the best advice, but there are good reasons for doing this. First of all, you may often be better placed than they are to know if they can help. Sometimes, for example, if you tell them that you're trying to get to kibbutz so-and-so, they may only be going part of the way and think that they can't help. But in fact, depending on where you are, and granted, getting a lift all the way is always better if you can, but sometimes that partial tramp might get you to a strategically better spot where you can catch that lift that will take you the rest of the way. The other reason for talking to the driver and finding out where they're going first is that you can get a sense for them. And if you haven't yet volunteered your destination, then if your ninja senses like those cicadas, or your spidey senses start tingling at all, you still have a way out, because you can say, oh, you're not going that far, or you're going somewhere else, or you can make up some other excuse to decline the ride. One time my ninja senses started tingling with one particular guy before I even got to his car. But fortunately the bus arrived right at that moment, so I had an easy out. And who knows, maybe he would have been just fine. But when I got on the bus and he took off in the opposite direction, I was just really glad I had played it safe. In fact, maybe he hadn't even stopped for me at all and I had just misread the whole situation, although I don't think so. Anyways, always trust your ninja senses. Either way, that was my only truly sketchy situation, but doing your research about how to hitchhike safely and always having a backup plan will help you be more confident. There are lots of videos online by people who have much more experience hitchhiking than I do, so I'll put some links to those down below and you can check those out. Camps are safe in Israel, and another rich and rewarding part of the Shvil and the connection that it gives you to the people of Israel. Just make sure that you know how to camp safely and then go ahead and point your finger at the middle of the road. So, are you planning for the Shvil or for another trail? Did this video help you understand how a camp can help you on your Shvil journey? Do you still have other questions? Tell me about it in the comments down below, down there. If you've liked this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, ring the bell, and share with your friends. Also, if you've hiked the Shvil Israel and have anything helpful to add, or if you just have stories of camping in Israel, then go ahead and share those in the comments as well. They'll help somebody else who's planning to hike the Shvil, and I'd just love to hear your experience. I'm so excited that we get to share our journeys in this way, and I can't wait to see you again next time. Until then, thanks for watching, and shalom, eh?